Welcome back to part 2 of the Listening Lecturette, where we'll focus today on the types of listening situations, why we listen ineffectively, and ultimately how we can improve our listening effectiveness. One of the ways to start thinking about it is what types of listening situations occur. The first is discriminative listening, and that's when you listen to focus on sounds so that you will later on be able to make meaning of it. You can listen to the words, you can listen to determine who is speaking, the sex of the person speaking, how many people are speaking. You need to discriminate amongst the competing sounds. After you do that, you can move on to comprehensive listening, where you are listening to understand. Some people call this practical listening. This is what most of us consider to be the primary listening situation, listening for the purpose of understanding meaning. You can move into critical listening next. So here you are listening, but you're listening specifically to determine whether you're going to accept what somebody says or not. So essentially you are evaluating, you are judging. You're judging the evidence being used. You might listen to a politician critically. You might listen to a significant other critically as the explanation as to the reason why something occurred. You can also, the flip side of that is called empathetic listening, also known as therapeutic listening, where you are listening to feel, to make connections with somebody, being sympathetic, listening between the lines. And the last one is appreciative listening or pleasurable listening, where you are listening for the purpose of enjoyment. It could obviously be to music. That's why most people listen to music. Conversation, movies, all of those are examples of listening situations that involve appreciative listening. So you may be asking yourself, why after all these years do I not listen effectively? So why do we listen ineffectively? First and foremost, you may have hearing problems. Physiological reasons, remember that hearing is the first step in the listening process. And hearing problems are becoming more and more frequent amongst the young as we are dealing with iPods and loudspeakers. Health professionals are finding more young people with hearing problems than they used to have in the past. Sometimes we prematurely judge a listening situation as boring, and so it may act as a self-fulfilling prophecy. You go in, you expect it to be boring, and what a surprise, it's boring and therefore hard to listen to. There's no way to get around the fact that listening is hard. It requires active mental effort. So if it's hard, we tend to avoid it. One area that we may focus on is rapid thought. Most people speak at between 125 and 150 words a minute, yet as human beings, we are able to process information at between 400 and 800 words a minute. So we end up getting bored. We have more thought going on while other people are speaking. Noise can also interfere, and it can be external noise, which involve maybe you are critical of the speaker in general, you don't like what the person is wearing, therefore it distracts you. The environment might not be conducive to noise. You can be preoccupied with worry or with, oh, these are other things that I need to do. You could get involved emotionally, and then there's no way to get around the fact that technology can interfere with our ability to listen. So as students, you're all aware that you often get information overload, which makes it hard to choose amongst all the competing information in terms of what you should pay attention to and what you should try to remember. There's inappropriate approaches to listening. So just as you might assess the listening situation differently and then go in and expect to be entertained when it's really comprehensive listening that you should be doing, you can also fake listening, or what we would call pseudo-listening. You give the appearance of listening, but you're really not listening. Dan Aykroyd was an actor in a movie called Dragnet, where he played Sergeant Joe Friday, and he would say, "Just the facts, ma'am, only the facts," which is why we call this second one Dan Aykroyd listening. Insensitive listening, which is you don't care about looking between the lines, you only want the facts. Some people want to attack the other person, so they may lay in ambush. They may be trying to listen for information that they can use to tell the other person they're wrong. Some people have poor self-esteem issues, and they take everything that somebody says as a negative or a personal attack upon themselves. And then conversational narcissism can be an issue as well. Speaking is more fun. So if you enjoy speaking, you may want to hog the stage. If speaking is more fun, why do I want to listen? I'm more enjoying myself when I'm speaking. So some questions to ask yourself. How often might you misjudge the purpose of the listening situation? What are the main barriers you face when you are listening to others? How can you tell when others are listening, or sometimes more importantly, not listening to you? So the next step is, now that you know why we listen ineffectively, how might we be able to improve it? Well, the first is you got to pay attention. You have to force yourself to pay attention. Go beyond just hearing and actually start listening. You need to make adjustments. What kind of internal and external noise is out there that you can make changes in? If the temperature is an issue, maybe you want to dress in layers. If the technology is in your way, you want to move that. Listen to difficult material. It is difficult, I understand, that's why they call it difficult material, but the longer you try to listen to difficult material, the easier it gets. It's like listening to somebody with an accent where it's difficult in the beginning, and after a while it's easier to understand them. Give yourself a reason to listen. What benefit is there? What could you get out of this? And oftentimes the reason to listen might be what they didn't say, what you can learn. Sometimes you can learn from somebody who does things poorly. You can also listen for ideas and patterns of reasoning. As you're taking information from short-term memory and putting them in long-term memory, what can you connect it with that you already know? What's the overall picture, so that when you take your little snapshots, that you can fit it in and make sense of the whole picture? Remember that whole processing rate. So if we can listen faster than most people speak, what do you do in your spare time? You can take written notes. Even on the phone when somebody is talking to you, you can take written notes, and it'll force you to pay attention a little bit more, and then you can throw the information away afterwards. If you don't have written materials available, you might want to write a mental review after each point. You can also pay attention to how much support, examples, are they appropriate support for each point that a speaker is making? Again, even in conversation. You can anticipate what the speaker will say. The important thing here is that you anticipate what the speaker will say, then you wait and see if you were correct. Don't just assume that because you think you know what the speaker says that you can stop listening. And then listen to understand what else might not be said. Listen for additional meaning and read between the lines. So ask yourself, what do you do now to increase your listening effectiveness? Do you just give up when you're faced with a listening situation? How much time do you give the situation before you finally say it's too much? How might you minimize noise when you're listening? Again, both internal and external noise. And is there a new technique that you might now try to increase your listening effectiveness? If you look at the Chinese character that makes up the verb to listen, you'll notice that there's several elements that tell us something important about the skill. Obviously, you listen with your ears, but you can also listen with your eyes. Pay attention to what you see as well as what you hear. Give it your undivided attention. One, focus. And then you'll need to put your heart into it. Not only that you do the best you can, but also that involves empathetic listening. And the last character that you see in this verb is the one for king, which could imply that listening is the king of all communication behaviors, or that only kings who are effective listen. So now you can go out and listen more effectively to people. You can, according to Harry McKay, who is a motivational speaker, you can win more friends with your ears than with your mouth. So go win more friends and listen.